Welcome back, friends. Today we have an amazing journey with this beautiful Olympus DC, the 1970s equivalent of a point and shoot camera. It's got a beautiful 6-element lens, 1.7 at its widest aperture, and 40 millimeters. Small, lightweight, compact with a backlight compensation button. A match needle in the front, but all the match is handled by the meter, so it's just point and shoot. It's beautiful, and we're going to talk about it and the film today. However, before we do, let's go ahead and grab a beer, because it's nice to talk about film while drinking a beer. I actually forgot about this camera on my shelf, and the other day I went to pick it up and just check it out and make sure that everything was working fine, as I do as I look at these little 35 series Olympus cameras, and I have an absolute love affair with them. They are beautiful, by the way. And I realized that there was still film in it. And then I remember what happened way back in the day, 2-3 years ago. I loaded up some film and I thought to myself, I'd like to take a couple rolls of film over the next couple years, maybe just a shot a day, and have this be my time capsule. But I don't really remember much of what happened with it after that. So as we're looking at this video, I don't know what's inside this little camera. I don't even remember the film that's in there. In fact, I think this is the only roll of film that I've ever shot through this camera. So, with that out of the way and that in mind, today's video is going to be more of a conversation about this journey of this beautiful camera, and share with you how I developed the film. So let's go ahead and do just that. Pop it open and give it a look. I always love how these things work, and I forget sometimes that the actual back release is on the bottom of these cameras. So it's nice whenever you work with your camera, just so that you know to be humble and allow yourself to remember that you don't know everything. And here we go. I didn't break it. Luckily, I realized that little tab was down there, and it looks like there's some Acros in here. And I'm excited about Acros because I really like the Neopan Acros. They've got several versions of it. This is the version 1. But just look at that. The shutter is built into the lens, and I can't show you here because I don't have a properly working battery in the camera, unfortunately. And because this is an automatic camera, I can't even release the cocked shutter, so I got to get another battery for that. And it actually takes a Duracell or one of those 6225s, 625A, one of those weird shapes. But let's just jump right into it. Let's get the film and go. Okay, after grabbing a few things, I've got my darkroom development kit right here, and I haven't developed film in at least a year, maybe more, and I think that the developer that I've got that I'll be using later is probably 2 years, possibly 3 years old. And that's not too much of a problem with black and white. It just means that it's very weak, if it works at all, and I believe that it will work. I've developed film with older developer before, so I'm not too worried about this. It just means I'll develop it a little longer than I would. So we've got our Patterson tank right here. We got to grab all the pieces and pull them out. Just for those of you that don't know, that's our spindle, our winding spool. We're going to make that a little bit smaller. It's set up for 120 right now. And you just kind of ratchet it and load your film to it. It sounds funky, but once you see it done once or twice, I learned how to do this in photography class back in the day. You'll be able to do it pretty easily too, if that's what you want. All right, as we're on our way back, we've got a couple other things. I needed a can opener to help me pop open the film and a pair of scissors. And so we just load all that into the bag. And we're going to be doing this in the dark from behind the camera. And but while we think about this, while I think about this roll, I'm just wondering, I was out shooting portraits earlier today. And I was shooting portraits with my modern digital cameras. It's for a wedding that I've got. And I came home and I was looking at my Olympus and a 35 RC and 35 ED and some of these cameras, and then an Olympus OM4. And while I was looking at it, I realized, hey, that OM4 had that beautiful spot meter with 8-spot metering and all this other stuff. And then I was talking to my sweetheart, and I was so excited about just using the OM4 because that's the camera I've always wanted. The OM4 or the OM4T. I've got an OM4 and it doesn't have a battery drain issue. It's great. And I haven't even put a roll through it. And I thought about today taking it with me just to shoot a roll while I was out there with my clients, just to have it. But I didn't. And when I came home, I was talking with my sweetheart, and I thought, wow, that 8-spot metering, I was looking through and just thinking about the highlight and the shadow tones and all that stuff. And then I had kind of a surreal moment because I realized, you know, you put a Sony a7 III up to your eyeball, and, you know, it's got something like 1,200 sector zone metering immediately, averaging. It's going all through it. And then you set your modern digital camera up to be so perfect that the image is almost clinical, and it really becomes just point and shoot other than a few things. But with film, with only 35, with this, back in the day, you had to think about those things quite a bit more. And that excites me because it's a challenge. You know, I always think to myself, hey, if you can do it in film, you can do it anytime you want. You can really do it. And, you know, there's so much latitude in digital files, like the Sony RAW files or the Nikon files. There's so much latitude in those files that you can shoot RAW and almost recover 4 stops, 5 stops of darkness and maybe 3 stops or 4 stops of highlights that are completely blown out. You know, you can get away. There's a lot of fudge room, but not so much with film, you know. And I think that's something that's beautiful. I was really thinking about a picture that I took when I was framing a backlit subject today, a bride and groom dipping. And this is their like a love story photos that we're doing. And they were dipping, and I was just thinking about, hey, you know, I'm using a neutral density filter so I can sync my flash at 1/200th of a second. And I'm not really worried about the background being very bright, the sky, because I know for a fact that I can use my flash to brighten my subject, so I expose for the sky. And I know that anything else that takes place in Lightroom or Photoshop will come out perfect. But I was just thinking about that shot if I had to do it with something like this camera. You know, you'd push the 1.5 stop backlight compensation button and then recompose while still holding that little metal button, and that would be it. You wouldn't have all that wiggle room. You know, you would have just whatever the camera chose in this instance. With the OM4 or a manual camera, of course, you'd have some more choices, but you may not. You may only have 11 or 12 stops of dynamic range to deal with, and you're going to have to make some decisions about if you want to blow out some of the highlights in the skies like you might do in Portra in order to bring in the shadows of the face from a backlit subject, or do you want to, you know, crunch everything down like with Acros so that you can get some inky blacks or some Tri-X. But with digital, it's so clinical. There's so much information. You kind of have the best of both worlds. And that's kind of not as fun as shooting film. And plus, there's a look straight out of the camera with film when exposed properly that's just beautiful. I think that's why we like it today. All right, enough of that. We're done with this, so let's move on to the images. Let's see what we got. So this slideshow is a slideshow completely unedited just for you to see and kind of see what the raw shots straight from the scanner would look like. So go ahead and give that a shot. Don't forget to stick around at the end. There'll be a little video of how you could edit these in Lightroom just to show you what adjusting the contrast tones and adding noise reduction and things like that might do. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you see anything down there that you want, need some film, check the Amazon links. That definitely helps. And I will catch you guys on the flip side.